Sit back, relax, cause here we go. It's a Porc Therapy bonus show. Oh yeah!
Hello, and welcome to a special bonus edition of Porc Therapy. I'm Stephanie, your host, and you can find out more about me at porctherapy.com. It's pork like a porcupine, and I'm not a therapist, but I do have a talk show about happiness and freedom and sort of how we can get more of them in our lives. Who doesn't want that, right? So if you listen, then hopefully you'll pick up some ideas that you like, or at least be entertained. That's sort of my goal here. And you can also add my podcast feed over at the website porctherapy.com to get more shows like this. And today I'm very pleased to have with me Jake and Hannah. And they are some friends of mine, but they also have their own websites and programs that I want you all to know about. Jake is the host of The Voluntary Life at thevoluntarylife.com. It's a podcast also about personal freedom, so you can tell we already have something in common. And I'm sure you'll like that if you listen to my show at all. And Hannah has a blog called Becoming Who You Are at becomingwhoyouare.net. She's got all kinds of articles, coaching, things that center around the idea of authenticity and living, and also sort of how you can become happier and more free in your own life. So obviously we have a lot of stuff that we can relate to each other over. And would you like to say hello, Jake and Hannah?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, you both sound great. You're coming to me from halfway across the world, from over in England, and I'm in the U.S. in New Hampshire. So it's nice that we have Skype, that we can be able to connect with each other. That's really nice.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's awesome. Skype has its problems sometimes, but it is awesome to be able to chat.
Yeah, I prefer Mumble to Skype, and Mumble is the program that I actually use to do my live show on the Liberty Radio Network. So it's basically a voice chat program that's designed for gaming, actually, and it has low latency and high quality voice sort of transmission. But the only downside is if you want to use it like Skype and talk to somebody, you have to have a server set up, and the server costs money, so it's not free like Skype, but it's definitely high quality, and it's secure, which Skype isn't necessarily secure. Not that that really matters too much to me, but it's another alternative that I think is interesting. So
I'll have to check that out. I've not actually seen that one before.
Yeah, if you ever do end up doing a live show on LRN or somewhere else, maybe that would be a good way to stream your audio to the whatever server is streaming out the show.
That sounds interesting.
Yes, indeed. So I wanted to talk to you both because we all were recently at the Porcupine Freedom Festival 2012, and that was up in Lancaster, New Hampshire. You all came to visit me, and now I'm sounding like I'm from the South. I'm saying you all, but I don't like the phrase "you guys" because Hannah's not a guy, and I don't know. It's just not that inclusive. I know people use it to refer to mixed genders, but I don't know, something about it strikes me a little bit weird. So I've been saying you all, but you individuals, I don't know. What's the best way to say?
You people.
You people.
Just say yeehaw on the end and then it'll sound perfect.
Yeehaw! Yeah, that would be fitting with some of the stuff that you probably witnessed at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. No, we're really not that redneck up here in New Hampshire. But yeah, you recently came for a visit, and you came to I guess you flew into Boston, spent a couple days there, and then we all sort of rendezvoused at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which is in a very rural place in New Hampshire. It's Lancaster, New Hampshire, and it is well, to put it in perspective, most people don't get cell phone signal there. There's even the internet is a little bit sketchy. It's difficult to be connected to the outside world. There are lots of mountains, though, and fresh air and animals and maybe even bugs. And there were lots of freedom lovers there that week in particular because it was Porc Fest. So I wanted to basically know, this is the first trip that you've taken to New Hampshire. I want to know what you thought and what were your impressions of Porc Fest itself. Maybe talk about some of the things that you saw there that you liked or didn't like. I'm just kind of curious because I've been living here for 6 years and I'm an old hat at New Hampshire, but I want to know what sort of some Porc Fest virgins or first-timers thought about it.
Well, just to go first, I had a fantastic time. I think we had great fun. We really, really enjoyed ourselves, had a great trip, and it was, it was just lovely to be able to meet up with you again and to meet up with other friends, and that was sort of the best aspect of Fest for me. Was just as an opportunity really to get together with like-minded people, mostly reconnecting with people who we've met before, but also meeting new people, which was great. And I thought the visiting New Hampshire was really cool as well. It was really, really interesting to see it. It's beautiful. And I didn't really, I sort of imagined New Hampshire being more just, I don't know, rolling hills and farms and stuff, but there's like real mountains and hills and forests, just miles and miles of forest that we saw. And
did you see a moose?
We didn't see any.
No, we were a bit disappointed not to see a moose or a bear.
Yeah, we thought we might get to see a bear or something, but
that was going to be my next question. Did you see a bear? Because the moose is good luck. The bear, well, not so much.
Yeah.
One of our friends does have, as he puts it, a raccoon-shaped dent in the front of his car now, though. And,
yes. I'm intimately familiar with this dent.
Yeah. Yeah, this was just for people who weren't there. This was a very good friend of all of ours who essentially hit a raccoon, and it completely messed up the radiator, and it was a bit of a pain.
And eventually they made it home, but had to sort of fix this raccoon-shaped hole, as he put it. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of wildlife here in New Hampshire. That's something I think that surprises some people. It did take me about 3 years before I saw a live moose after I moved to New Hampshire. I remember the first week that I came here, I was invited to a potluck with some coworkers, and one of the things that somebody brought was ground moose sauté because they had hit a moose in their van. And usually when you hit a moose in New Hampshire, if it's an adult moose anyway, your car takes more damage than the moose. Sometimes they'll just walk away after a big crash. And actually it's no joke, because sometimes they can really do some serious damage to somebody's car. But this person, decided to, when life gave them a moose, they made moose lemonade. They made ground moose stew, because I guess their car was pretty much wrecked, but at least they had some food that they could have from it. So that was the first moose that I saw in New Hampshire, but the first live moose wasn't for a couple years after that. But I'm wondering, I know you said you came to meet up with people, and I completely agree. Even though I live here, PorcFest is kind of my vacation. And I realize to an extent, because I do live here, it's sort of like there's this dynamic where it's sort of like I'm hosting a little bit. So I feel a little bit, I don't know, not like obligated or pressured, but like I feel like I should kind of, engage with people, and, it would be a nice thing to do to kind of show them around and talk to them and answer questions if they have them about what it's like here and stuff like that. And I was pretty busy the week of PorcFest, but the best part, as you said, was getting to see you and getting to see some other people, maybe people that I don't normally get to see in life, like friends on Facebook and stuff like that, friends from far away, and to connect with them in real time was really cool. So was there anything else? Did you go to many of the talks at PorcFest? Because I didn't go to too many of them. I was kind of deterred by thinking they would be on video anyway, and also I don't know, it was just really busy. I had a lot of stuff that I was kind of working on behind the scenes, like free aid. But yeah, what were some of your impressions of the talks if you went to them?
I actually didn't go to that many talks. I think because, like you said, I knew that they were being videoed and I could catch them later on YouTube. And for me, like Jake was saying, one of the real highlights of being there was the people and being able to see you, being able to meet new people, catch up with some old friends as well that we hadn't seen for a while. And so while we were there, I wanted to maximize my time with them. And so I sort of made a decision quite early on in the week that that took priority over necessarily going to any talks or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just simply because I couldn't always see those friends later on, whereas I could catch the talks on YouTube.
Very smart.
Yeah, I went to a couple of them, and I enjoyed a couple of them, but I still, same as Hannah, I still found it, the opportunity of seeing people was more important. Plus, we did get to take part in a few radio shows like your one, which was fun.
Oh,
Both
yeah.
Hannah and I were on your show. That was really fun, actually, the live shows. And
Oh,
I
I'm so
gate
glad.
crashed Free Talk Live and School Sucks.
Uh-huh.
And Brett very kindly invited me to take part in one of his talks as well. So I did a talk with him. So
Yes.
yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, that was great. And I remember your goal was to be on something every day, and that was awesome.
Yeah, because that happened on the first day. Brett invited me to do a talk with him, and it was a lot of fun. So I thought, oh, dude, that was great. If I could do that again, that'd be good. So, so in the end, it turned into a can I gate crash something every single day?
And did you get, I guess, some inspiration for your own shows or for your blog, Hannah? Like, did you end up like writing anything down that you saw there that you thought, oh, this would be great to make a blog post on when I get back, or this would be a good interview to do later on?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think not so much sort of specific topics that I heard about inspired me, but I think being around people who were talking about freedom and talking about being able to live a free life was incredibly inspiring in a sort of indirect way. And it definitely gave me a lot of food for thought.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is a podcast, of course, so we can edit anything out if you're uncomfortable, but I don't know how much you want to get into sort of like your own ideas about moving places for freedom and like your thoughts on how to get more freedom in your like location. I know those ideas are still evolving for me, and maybe they are for you too, but it's been interesting to talk to you about those kind of things because I get some new information and new ideas about sort of where to live to be the most free. And just from my own experience, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but just from my own experience, you know, back in 2006, especially before that I was an undergraduate. I graduated in 2006 from college, and I lived in Massachusetts, which is, you know, a skip and a jump away from New Hampshire, you know, like very close. And I was thinking about, you know, what do I want to do after I graduate? And I really wanted to move to New Hampshire, not only because it was really easy, but I knew that it would be a big increase in the amount of freedom. And I know you're from England, so maybe I don't know if there's any kind of commensurate places where you could be, you know, living maybe in a big city or something and then move slightly outside of it and you're suddenly not subject to certain taxes or regulations or whatever. But that was what it was like going from Massachusetts to New Hampshire, where in Massachusetts there was a sales tax and income tax, and so in New Hampshire they have neither one of those, and so immediately I was free of two different taxes that I was paying every single time I saw my paycheck or every single day whenever I bought anything. So that was a huge reason, and I was thinking that even before I was really like a liberty-minded person, explicitly, I remember thinking, wow, it would be great if I lived in New Hampshire, then I wouldn't have to deal with like something that costs $1 wouldn't cost $1.06, it would cost $1. So,
yeah, it's funny. I really noticed that coming from Boston up to New Hampshire, because one of the things that always catches me off guard when I come to the States is the sales tax. And so you think you're paying a certain amount for something, then you take it to the checkout, and it's like, oh no, it's actually, you know, a few cents more expensive or however much more expensive. And it's funny for us because we don't have that here. So we don't have states. So any tax applies to the whole country. So we have a basic rate of 20% income tax, and then VAT, which is the equivalent of sales tax, which is also 20%, but it's included in the price.
Wow.
Of everything, so it doesn't get added on afterwards.
So does everybody pay a 20% income tax, no matter who they are, or is it a graduated?
No, it's progressive.
You get a certain amount tax free, but it's a very, very small amount per year. It's like a few £1,000s. And then, the basic rate is 20%. And then the more you earn, the more you pay, basically. And it goes up to, I think, 50% now.
Yeah, I don't even know what the top rate is.
I think it's 50% or 45% or something like that. But it's a significant amount of your paycheck.
Yeah.
And we also have something called national insurance as well, which is like your mandatory contributions to your state pension later on, and your right to benefits like unemployment benefits and things like that. And that, if you're self-employed, that is £2.60 a week.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
it does add up.
Yeah.
Quite a lot.
Yeah.
And if you earn over a certain amount, then you have to pay another 10% of your income in national insurance instead of as well as the £2.50 a week.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's really when you talk about our thoughts about sort of moving abroad, I can definitely say for me, especially because I am fully self-employed at the moment, it's really opened my eyes about just how much tax you have to pay. Because I think if you're in employment and it just gets taken off your paycheck every month, you don't really notice it so much. But when you actually have to hand the money over yourself, it feels so much more real somehow, and it really burns.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, I mean, what happens to somebody, like, are there any cases of people publicly not paying taxes, resisting, or anything like that, and what happens to them if so?
We don't really hear so much
We
about.
don't have
'Cause I
like a
know,
tax resistance
yeah,
movement in the same way.
I think it's probably quite different, especially to New Hampshire, where people are very vocal about civil disobedience and
Yeah.
very public about doing that.
Well, we
Um,
even have celebrities. I mean, Wesley Snipes was like a high profile celebrity. He's not a Liberty person as far as I know, and he lives out in California, but he just said, screw this, I'm not paying. And he didn't, and he got sent to jail. And then of course there are people like was it Larkin Rose or Irwin Schiff, who were explicit anarchists or tax resistors, and like from a principled standpoint, and they've gone to jail too, and eventually they get out, but yeah, maybe we do have a little bit more public tax resistance. So just nobody ever dares to go outside the system there, huh?
Well,
I think people do, but they're just not as public about it. I mean, there are definitely people who avoid paying tax or evade paying tax, but they're a lot more subtle about it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that I think may be a little bit different in the UK is there are. I mean, it's not that they're not that easy to use them, but there are offshore places like Jersey and Guernsey and the Isle of Man, and there are companies that set up in offshore locations and like that.
I'm going to set up on the Isle of Woman. No, just kidding.
And you can also have, set up various things like trust funds and stuff like that. Now, I don't think that is as easy in the States to do. Like, I think, as far as I understand, I don't really know the details of it, but as far as I understand, the IRS makes it a lot more difficult for that to happen. So maybe that's partly sort of what's going on, is that maybe offshore arrangements are a little bit closer. I mean, they're certainly physically closer. There's a lot of places that are actually part of UK jurisdiction, which are still offshore for tax purposes. And it's all, you have to get a lawyer and work out how to do it all properly, but that's maybe a little bit more easily available. And the other thing that happens is that, UK people, like pretty much anyone else in the world except Americans and I think Israelis or some other country in Africa, UK people can go abroad and be resident abroad. So you can go to a lower tax place and you can significantly change your tax circumstances. Whereas if you're an American citizen, as far as I understand, even if you go abroad and you're resident abroad, you still have to report taxes to the IRS, and you still have to, essentially you're still liable, right?
Yep, they gotcha, no matter where you are. And sometimes if they just have this new policy or law, I don't know really the details, but I've heard, there was this high-profile case of Eduardo Saverin, the co-founder of Facebook. He was involved with the early stages of Facebook, but right before Facebook had their IPO, he decided to leave the country and go to, was it Argentina or somewhere in South America? And
I think it was somewhere like Singapore.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
Singapore.
It was in Asia somewhere.
Yeah.
That's right. It was Singapore. You're right. Thank you. And so, I mean, he was a U.S. citizen, I guess, and they were saying, well, he's leaving for tax purposes. And then they brought out this law that said, if the government deems that somebody is trying to renounce their citizenship or leave the country for the purpose of not paying taxes, they will still be liable for the taxes, and they will be also they will lose their citizenship, but they'll still be liable for the taxes. So they really try to get you.
Wow.
I can't imagine how they can do that, but they really have you in a precarious place.
Yeah, and it kind of, I mean, I guess it shows what a bad state the economy's in if they're that desperate that they're going to go chasing around people who want to renounce their citizenship.
Yeah, it's so backwards. It's like, okay, it's somebody in a relationship. Okay, I want to leave. This isn't working out for me. No, you can't leave. I'm going to, I'm going to hit you if you leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eh,
But the other thing that is different here is, when you were talking about Wesley Snipes,
yeah.
and him saying, "Fuck this, I'm not going to pay the taxes," and going to prison. There's it reminded me of a story. I don't know if you remember this. It was in the paper recently about a comedian, a British comedian called Jimmy Carr.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't hear this. So Jimmy Carr, apparently, the Prime Minister David Cameron made a speech where he said he thought it was really morally wrong that that Jimmy Carr was paying very little taxes, because basically Jimmy Carr's got a good lawyer and he's obviously got some kind of offshore arrangement and he's paying very, very low taxes. And this came out in the papers. Now, what's interesting is that Jimmy Carr's initial response was apparently to say, yeah, I pay the minimum amount that I absolutely have to, which I thought, good for him.
Yeah.
And then, this says something about the overall level of kind of statism here, I suppose. He actually then totally changed track after the amount of criticism he came under, and he basically did this long, drawn-out apology where he essentially. I don't really know how. I should look this up because I don't really follow papers, so I don't really know how the story ended. But he completely backtracked, and he's terribly sorry, and he realizes and he's mistaken, and all this kind of stuff. And this is like what he's doing is legal. It's completely legal. All he's doing is efficiently minimizing his tax burden, but that is considered here to be a moral issue.
Wow.
Which the funny thing is, for me, it's like. It's the absolutely opposite way around. I think the taxes are the immoral thing.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, they have to be able to get people at a young age to be able to flip morality on its head like that. I mean, to tell them that it is moral to sacrifice yourself for everybody else and for everybody else to be able to take what's supposed to be yours. I mean, I don't see any way that could be consistent with what I understand about morality. But yeah, I mean, it's just a very powerful social pressure, I guess. I mean, just the value of taking care of the group and so forth. And even it's funny that you mentioned he was a comedian too, Jake, because I think people kind of expect comedians to be misanthropes in a sense.
Right.
But he didn't get a pass on that, apparently.
He is actually quite a misanthrope. He's a very, in his overall comedian style. But interestingly, he didn't feel like, he obviously decided for whatever reason. And I don't believe that he truly believed any of that bullshit propaganda. I'm sure it was just that he thought, oh, I'm not going to get work if I don't, make this this big apology.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, apparently that's what happened.
Wow, very interesting. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but it is a very telling story.
Which is kind of this is sort of overall culture in Britain. It's even worse in continental Europe. It's even worse. But that's why, just one of the things for us, it's interesting to come to something like Porkfest, because there is no Porkfest in Europe. There just isn't, and there's nothing remotely like it. There's a few free market think tanks and things like that, but they're very much on the kind of think tanky, academic-y, political, organized sort of style of doing things. There's nothing like a sort of grassroots movement like the Free State Project or the people who are doing things, like all of the podcasts, libertarian podcasts in the States. There's very, very little going on here. So we are in a very different sort of culture over here, just regarding ideas to do with liberty. Obviously, things in the States have changed and gone seriously downhill massively in terms of what real freedoms people actually have in the States. But there are still people interested in the idea of liberty, and I think there are more of them in the US than there are, and Canada than there are here.
I would agree with that, definitely.
Wow, that's a very interesting observation. I guess I'm kind of, it's easy when I live here in New Hampshire and pretty much all my friends are Liberty people and all the podcasts that I listen to are Liberty podcasts. It's very easy to live in a bubble, and to sort of block out the outside world. And I still don't know how much of a good thing or a bad thing that is. I mean, on one hand, I feel happier. On the other hand, am I just evading reality and am I not seeing what's kind of going on in the outside world? I don't know. But yeah, I realize it's very different.
Your experience is your reality. So if that's the environment that you're living in, I think good for you for having created that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're making me feel better.
I tell you, if there was a bunch of... Obviously, I've got disagreements with some of the ideas around the Free State Project and some of those things. But nonetheless, I think it's awesome that there are a bunch of people who've actually decided to make the choice to live closer together because they share the same values. I mean, that's like an intentional community. They're actually they've put their money where their mouth is, and they've actually gone and moved to live near other people who share their values. And I have a lot of respect for that, because I think regardless of any kind of I may not specifically agree with some of the things that they think or some of the ideas that they have, but nonetheless, I admire what they're doing in their personal lives to actually live among people who share their values.
Absolutely. I think having been to New Hampshire and been to Porkfest and also visiting Keene, which is regarded as one of the hubs of the Free State Project, I can really, really see why it's so tempting, why some people really want to go there. Because I think, I came away thinking, like Jake, I don't necessarily agree with some of the things that happen or some of the philosophies of people that have, but if it was possible, I would definitely be tempted. Obviously, we can't for visa reasons, but I would definitely be tempted to move there, just because there is something incredibly refreshing about...
Unless you gay marry me, Hannah.
Even then, I don't think I could.
Yeah, and where does that leave me? Do I have to marry Brian then?
Maybe. Or we could, I don't know.
The interesting thing is, though, I think because it's federal law, the whole marriage visa issue, I think even if you're in like a civil partnership or whatever you call it, they still won't let you get a visa. Which is, I think it's just really unfair, frankly, because it's a marriage,
It definitely is unfair. And there have been cases where, I don't know, there was a case I read about where there was a man who it was a gay couple, and they had been together for something like 17 years, and one of them didn't have the correct papers, approved by the government, and he was taking care of his partner who had advanced HIV, and they kicked him out of the country, and then the partner had nobody to care for him, and it was a total mess. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know that they do, if you try to do the thing where you marry somebody and get them in the country, they will check up on it. They will want to see pictures of you, and they'll ask you if you've, they'll ask you questions about your relationship and stuff. And to me, you're right. The whole thing is just so silly. I wish that we didn't have to deal with it at all. And I can really empathize with people who are just held back from so many things. Like these arbitrary borders are holding people back from living near their friends, from being with people that they might be compatible with, from doing business, all kinds of things. And even traveling. I mean, even going on vacation becomes an arduous thing when you have to deal with all this paperwork, passports, visas, all this stuff. So
we get a grilling every time you want to come to the States and to Canada as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know. And I think that's so unfortunate. So until we can get rid of borders... Oh, go ahead.
I used to live with someone who married an American, and she had to go through this whole interview process where they actually had to prove that they'd had a relationship with, photos Skype chat transcripts and stuff like that, and prove
Wow.
the history of their relationship and answer questions about each other. It's like a test
Wow.
to, and it's awful because,
Some creepy bureaucrat reading your Skype transcripts.
Ugh.
and also just the fact that you have to prove something like that. It's just,
Yeah.
and it's something that I really feel quite angry about when I think about it. The fact that, some people might be denied being together because of that, and especially if you're in a gay relationship, because it's just not it's just not allowed. It just seems so backward that that's still the case.
Yeah, definitely. And New Hampshire still is one of the only, that was why I made that joke, because New Hampshire is one of the only places that actually has gay marriage and they're still trying to overturn it. I mean, there's still politicians trying to get rid of
Wow.
it. I think one of 6 states or something that has it. So, yeah, I mean, I just would like to get rid of borders altogether. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not serving any useful purpose, and of course, they're one and the same with statism and these tax farms
Yeah.
that we were discussing before.
Yeah.
Now, I wrote down a couple things that I wanted to go back to that you both had mentioned before. One of them was self-employment. I want to talk about that, but first, you were mentioning, Hannah and Jake, that you both had some sort of like disagreements with the FSP, or people or certain people within it, and I agree. I do too, actually. And I think if I had known, if there was a community that I knew of people who 100% shared all my values of, atheist, anarchist, feminist, I don't know, like if there were all kinds of people who had everything 100% in line with my ideas, I would have moved there. But the Free State Project was kind of the closest thing to that was feasible at the time when I learned about it. And still, I found it better to have, I don't know, maybe like religious libertarians or maybe minarchists instead of complete liberty advocates as neighbors, instead of the people, the random people that I was living with amongst in Massachusetts. So even I think if you can get halfway there, it's probably better than just random chance. But what are some of do you want to go into some of the things specifically that you disagreed with? Because I'm kind of curious if they're the same things that I disagree with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it actually comes back to something else that we were talking about earlier for me, which was tax evasion and going to jail for tax evasion, because I'm not a fan of tax. I'm not a fan of being forced to do anything. I'm not a fan of theft, which I think tax is. I don't enjoy being essentially held at gunpoint and people saying, give me your money, otherwise you're going to go to jail. That, to me, that's not living with freedom. However, that is the society that we live in. That is the world that we're in right now. And so for me, the whole civil disobedience movement and the tax movement, I can really empathize why people choose to do that, because I can really get behind the idea that they want to prove a point, and they want to highlight that, frankly, some of the laws are pointless. They're not really protecting anyone. They're not helping anyone. They're actually hindering a lot of people from living a free life. So I can really understand it from that point of view. The thing that bothers me about it is that it's, if their aim is to get more freedom, surely they would have more freedom just abiding by these laws or paying their taxes or finding some legal way to reduce the amount of tax that they're paying. Like doing it, I don't know, agrivism or something. I know that's not 100% legal, but, something that is not going up to a cop and saying, F you or something like that. Like, it's not so obvious.
Yeah, you're not going to have more freedom if you do that. And I agree with you. Actually, I mean, this is why that's not my personal style of activism that I choose to do. And, I realize everybody's got to do what they want, what they feel most comfortable with. But man, it seems very scary, to engage in this really confrontational style of activism, like the cop blocking and the confrontations with bureaucrats and the video cameras and everything. And I can't help but think you're not going to have more freedom personally in your own life if you do that stuff. And at times it takes on almost a little bit of a self-sacrificial feeling.
Absolutely. That's the other thing that really bothers me about it. You're not going to have more personal freedom if you're in prison.
Mm.
You're actually going to have significantly less, and it's going to impact your future as well. The amount of personal freedom you have in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, for some offences, if I were to commit them here, I wouldn't be allowed into the States again.
Yeah.
Because they have a sort of, blacklisted, a blacklist of offences that you commit.
Yeah.
And I think one of them is it's either drug possession or drug dealing or something like that. But, if I were, and I know that is sort of marijuana possession is quite a hot topic at the moment in the Free State Project. And that's something that people have used as sort of a means of civil disobedience. But I think ultimately it could severely impact your freedom in the future as well. And it just seems a little bit, just the word's gone out of my head now, but I'm thinking counterproductive. That's not quite the right word, but
it does seem like a big deal, like something that could really disproportionately affect your future, way out of whack with what you actually did, which is completely peaceful. And personally, pot is not, I'll be honest, it's not the freedom that I want. I don't care. I mean, I don't want to see people go to jail, and I get it. And I really feel terribly because I know that it severely affects society, and it has such negative consequences upon the world in which I live. And it does affect my life, even though I don't smoke pot. I could still get caught up in the drug war, and I still pay for the drug war, and I hate that, and I don't want to continue doing that. But the freedom to use drugs is not something that I'm interested in for myself.
No, absolutely not. I'm more interested in, for me, I'm more interested in, what freedom can I get in my personal life, in my life right now, in the world as it is right now.
Yeah.
What can I do to live, as freely as possible and live a life that I really kind of create a life that I really want to live as well. That's sort of the most important thing to me. And I appreciate also that view might be really, really unpopular with some of the people who are into activism. Just because I think you're right when you say there is this sort of almost like martyr position that they take.
Well, we just had this Skype call last weekend where Jake has would that be on the Psychology Book Club podcast, Jake, or was it just a private one? The Virtue of Selfishness chat?
No, I'll stick that on the Voluntary Life.
Oh, okay, great. Well, okay, so that's going to go on the Voluntary Life. So we had a Skype call about Ayn Rand's book, The Virtue of Selfishness, and talked a lot about Rand and her ideas. And I do see some things, I guess, in like some people's liberty activism that do seem like, I'm throwing myself onto the gears of the state for everybody else's benefit, maybe for my children's freedom, maybe for my peers' freedom, but obviously I'm going to be a lot less free when this goes down, but I'm doing it so that overall we can all get more freedom. And I mean, I don't know, to me that does kind of smack of self-sacrifice.
Self-sacrifice, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that not everyone who's doing it has children, but, my sort of argument to that is, but how are your children going to feel when you're not there?
Yeah.
Because you're in prison or jail. I know those two things are kind of the same here, but I'm aware they're different in the States. So
it's typically not. Oh yeah, it's typically not people I see doing really like overt acts of civil disobedience that have children. I mean, it's typically like young single people. Right. But still, that's a great point, because there are so many children that grow up with parents who aren't there for one reason or another. And I think that is one of the worst things about sort of the so-called criminal justice system, or the prison system in the U.S., is that it does catch a lot of people who have families, and their families aren't helped by them being in jail. They especially for victimless crimes, possession of marijuana or whatever, or violation of, like not having your driver's license renewed, or some silly stuff like that. So those can really tear families apart. But I do agree with you about the kids. Like, the best thing you can do, or one of the best things you can do, I think, to create a freer world is to really be there for your kids.
Yeah, and be there, raise them peacefully as well. And, teach them sort of real right and wrong, not kind of what in our society's definition of right and wrong.
Yeah, so I think if we talk about civil disobedience, we have to sort of touch on political activism too, so-called activism. Was that another thing that you had disagreements with? Because I think that can also be a false dichotomy. Like some people think that if they don't want to do civil disobedience, well, they have another choice, and that one other choice is to do politics and to try to get people elected and pass bills. But I certainly don't think that that creates any meaningful change. Having done that for a little while myself and realized quickly that there were a number of problems with using a system, a coercive, forceful system to create more freedom or peace, it just doesn't work out. And a number of practical issues always play out, which I talked about extensively with Jake on The Voluntary Life. So you can go back and download that one if you want to hear a long conversation about that. But I mean, I think that's a false dichotomy personally, like either do civil disobedience or do politics. And I've kind of chosen different methods for my own activism. But talk about the politics a little bit. What do you think about that?
I don't engage in politics at all, which again is something that's really unpopular over here. And as we were talking about when we were there for Porc Fest, if people say, oh, you know, if it comes down to politics, and like, you know, so what side do you want or who do you vote for? And I say I don't vote. Because I'm a woman, I think I get but people died for your right to vote argument. Because obviously there was the suffragette and suffragist movement here, which was very prominent. And that's kind of a weapon, I think, that people use now.
You should make a little business cards with Emma Goldman's picture and the quote on it. If voting changed anything, it would be illegal.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, my response when people say that, because it's come up quite a few times now, I've actually been surprised. And my response has always been, no, they died for my right to choose whether I get to vote or not. And I choose not to exercise that right because I just don't want to engage with the system.
Yeah. Yeah, I can just picture that. I mean, of course, we hear variations of that same argument here too, but another thing I picture is like an older veteran type, you know, maybe a Vietnam vet saying, oh, don't you know how many people died for your freedoms and the military has given you this great life that you enjoy, and what a spoiled brat for not voting. And you hear some unmet needs in that statement, you know, like wanting to be acknowledged for all the hard stuff that they maybe were drafted into in the military and stuff, and to be appreciated, to be thanked, but yeah, voting is not going to get those needs met for that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think also just on this question of activism and political involvement, which neither of those things, they're both sort of very strong in the Free State part of the Free State Project. And I guess for me, what really strikes me is the opportunity cost. Even if you're interested in spreading freedom, even if you're interested in you know, spreading the message of freedom, the opportunity cost of those things is so huge. Because I mean, for example, you know, let's say that you have the chance to start a podcast, start a radio show, write a book, create some kind of subscription service with information about liberty and ideas for more personal freedom, whatever it is. You can do that, and you can spread these ideas, and you can grow a business, and you can, you know, bring knowledge of liberty to millions of people. Or you can go and be an activist and get locked up and, you know, have your own life and your own happiness totally ruined. And it just strikes me that obviously, you know, that makes news too, but for me, like, I'm interested in freedom because I'm interested in freedom for myself and for the people who I love and for my life. You know, I'm not interested in it because I'm interested that, you know, I should become a martyr and then somebody else is going to enjoy freedom somewhere down the line. So when I see that kind of activism, it doesn't sell me on the idea of liberty, because that looks to me like, oh, great, so, you know, liberty is about getting put in prison, which that definitely is not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in...
Sounds rather Orwellian, war is peace, and...
Yeah, I'm interested in finding real freedom for myself, which means... Oops, sorry. Lost the microphone there a bit. Which means, you know, financial freedom, being able to enjoy your life and so forth. So it just strikes me that, for those people who are involved in activism, even if they really are very passionate about spreading liberty, I don't think you have to throw yourself, into the kind of meat grinder of the state's oppressive system in order to show other people, oh, look, this is what happens. This is totally immoral. I'm being arrested because I'm carrying a bag of vegetables, or I'm being arrested because I'm not showing due deference to these stupid people in costumes who call themselves the authorities, whatever. If you do that, it is such a huge personal cost. And there's a personal cost to you, but there's also the opportunity cost that you don't get to do those projects that would spread the word, if that's what you're interested in, and would also give you greater freedom. Because, that saying, success is the best revenge. And for me, that's the way I look at the state. It's okay, I got put through the prison of state school where I was indoctrinated and where I was given all this stupid ideology. What I want is to get to a point where my success is the best revenge on the system that tried to break me.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's something that people who really are passionate, because I admire their passion and I admire their commitment and their dedication, but I just think that I hope that people who have that passion, that commitment, that dedication, and who are throwing themselves into activism, I hope they can find a way to channel that passion and dedication into entrepreneurship, for example, into creating value for people, and doing it in a way that also is in line with their own passion and interests. They can make liberty-oriented businesses. They can spread the words.
They can work on themselves. I mean, like you said, I really like that success is the best revenge idea that you brought out, Jake, because, yeah, you have been put through a lot of abuse in public school and in a statist society and maybe other factors too. But if you turn out to be a happy person, I mean, wow, that's great.
And you can. There's one person on this planet that you can definitely free, and that's yourself.
Yeah.
And if you haven't freed yourself,
the only one.
Sorry?
The only one.
Yeah. And if you haven't freed yourself, then you have no credibility when other people look at what you're doing. That's the thing that really strikes me, is that if you yourself are in a situation where you're kind of really, having all of these horrible things happen to you for avoidable reasons, then that doesn't give other people the sense, oh, I want to live that life. I really want to go and get arrested, for in order to demonstrate the sort of evilness of the state, because that's the kind of cost that if somebody who wants to get their own freedom in their own life, or they've got kids and they want to look after their kids and give freedom to them, they're never going to be attracted to that.
Yeah, wow, great. I want to say rant, but it's not really a rant. I mean, it's just truth. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that's great that you said that. I'm really glad that you have a chance to share that with my audience, because that is a crucial point, a very crucial point. So, okay.
And just to
yeah, please
to contrast it, how much better would it be to create your own business, get a really good lawyer, and pay virtually no taxes legally, and be able to go and live in some country in South America and enjoy the benefits of your entrepreneurship, and have a Liberty blog and a podcast and T-shirts, whatever you want, and spread the message and tell everyone about your success. How much more opportunity you're going to have to really enjoy the freedom and to show other people what's possible. That's the real revenge on the state that tried to break you.
Yeah. When you were saying that there's a sort of false dichotomy that, people think that they should either be involved in civil disobedience or political activism, I was thinking, well, actually, I'm sure there are a multitude of options that people have in how they choose to live their life and what sort of, liberty-centered, and I use this in quotes, activism they choose to take. But I was thinking, my philosophy on that is just living by example. So showing people like this is what it means to live with freedom. And that doesn't include going to prison. That doesn't include doing anything that could jeopardize my freedom.
I mean, that could always happen to you. I was thinking when we were talking about this earlier that this could always happen to you, especially as the police state gets bigger and, you know, the government cracks down on you more and more. You could get caught up in it, right? Like some neighbor could complain that your grass is too high, or you could be trying, like, I just keep thinking, what if I'm trying to help somebody someday when they're sick or hurt or whatever with free aid, and then I get charged with something for that?
Totally.
That could happen. Although I don't go out looking for it, you know, and I try my best.
Yeah.
I try my best to, of course, not hurt anyone. I would do that regardless of whether there were a law or not. But I try my best to comply with their rules or whatever, because I do want to keep my freedom. So I think there's a difference, though, between knowing that it could happen to you unexpectedly and going out and sort of almost looking for it or doing it purposely, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like, and there are countless cases of that kind of thing. People who, you know, get pulled over by corrupt cops and there's just nothing they can do about it. It's driving along the street normally or whatever. People who witness police brutality and they just do the right thing and film it because, you know, they can see someone getting beaten up. They're not, like, that's not activism. That's just doing the right thing in a situation that you find yourself in. And I think those people are fantastic and really brave. And I also feel my heart goes out to the people who just get caught up in the state because there's a multitude of them. But there is a difference between that and actually activism where you're looking to sort of make an example of yourself by getting thrown into the wheels, you know. And I think that I suppose that's the difference that I'm talking about. Like, of course, if you can't help it, if you're just leading your life, then it's tragic if people get stuck in situations where stupid laws about victimless crimes get applied to them in ways that they didn't expect to happen or whatever. But I think if you can avoid it, it's not I'm saying that you should for any moral reason. I'm just saying, like, it just makes more sense to me to try and optimize your experience of freedom in your own life. And that doesn't mean that you give any moral sanction to these stupid laws and victimless crimes. It doesn't mean that you say that they're good or that you say that you support them or anything. Just as I don't support the public roads by walking on them. I just have to walk on them because I have no choice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it really reminds me of the conversation that we had about ostracism on the live podcast from Porc when we were talking about, I was saying, you know, the right to be able to not engage is really important. And I think that applies to the state as well, because there are some things that we have to engage in order to function in our everyday lives. But I think for me, what is really important is choosing not to engage where I don't have to. So that includes not voting, that includes not getting arrested, that includes, you know, not doing anything that could potentially get me arrested. And that is my way of not engaging with the state and living as freely as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, two people who know a lot about living free, Hannah and Jake. I love it. Do you have a few more minutes, or do you have to get going now?
No, and we have a few more minutes. And I also I want to make sure that I say something about some of the things about Porkfest that I thought were really constructive.
Please, yeah.
Like, because, you know, we've said stuff about the kind of activism side, which is not for me, and the political involvement side, which also isn't for me. But I just think it's really cool that there are people doing things, really constructive, interesting things. Some of, like, I don't know that much about some of these things I'll mention, but seeing in Porkfest the projects like people trading silver coins and providing services to help with physical precious metal purchase and storage, and helping people understand, you know, what you can do to invest in precious metals as an individual investor. I thought that was really cool, you know, and really good that they even had like there was a vending machine which had
The
junk
money
silver
lith.
coins in it. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, that's actually one of the sponsors of Pork Therapy. It's don'ttreadonmeme.com. You can see a video about the money lith there, I think.
Right.
And
So
there's a
I
lot
thought
of
that
Bitcoin stuff too, right, Jake? Did you see some of that?
that's right, and that was another thing I was going to say. You know, there's a lot of stuff about Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
which I still don't know that much about, but it looks really interesting, and I think it's a really constructive, interesting, progressive thing to look at. You know,
Mm.
how cool would that be? A decentralized currency. Obviously, it's not it's not physical and doesn't have that aspect that gold and silver have always had. But who knows? I'm interested to see how it develops, and I think it's also a really positive thing to get involved in because it's kind of in line with people's values, but it's also a really constructive thing to do.
Yeah, it really seems to be on the cutting edge, and I think I think Bitcoins are really gonna change the world. But of course, too, there's other alternative currencies that are kind of tried and true that have a lot of principle backing them up, and not only that, but they're useful as other things like metals, precious metals. So there's a lot of exciting stuff in that area. I know you're particularly interested in financial freedom, but also in personal and psychological freedom too. And I think there are people here in New Hampshire who are into that stuff too, and I've tried to find them, but really what's ended up happening is I've kind of found them in other places too, like you. I don't know if I would have met either one of you if it weren't for doing Porc Therapy. So that's kind of one of those rewarding things about trying to spread ideas or getting out there publicly that really has brought me a lot of enrichment in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And us too as well, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, I've learned a huge amount from talk therapy. You know, it really, like I said in the mail out that I sent earlier, I really learn something new from you every week, and just in the
Oh.
stuff that you talk about, and it really makes me think about freedom in my own life and freedom in the world that I'm living in as well. And I really, and it's been great getting to know you better as well. So I'm really glad that it's really benefited me, I think, as well.
Oh, thank
But,
you so much. That's really nice. I think we all learn from each other's shows and blogs. I really, really mean that. I mean, and it's great to be able to collaborate and get together and stuff. And I hope to be seeing more of you in the future. I know, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but do you want to talk a little bit about maybe your future plans for getting more freedom and where to live?
Yeah,
yeah, we
sure.
can do. I mean, they're not really sort of concrete plans right now. It's more
Just an
just
idea for now, right? Sort of.
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we got an adventure planned. We're
Yeah.
going to go and check out spending the winter in Mexico,
Yeah.
spending 6 months there, and seeing what it's like to be sort of location independent and what it's like to live somewhere nice and sunny when it's horrible here in the winter.
But it's pretty
And
horrible here right now, to be honest,
yeah,
as well. So it's going to be really nice going there.
and just checking it out because for a number of reasons, it's a beautiful. We want to be somewhere on a beautiful beach. There's also beautiful beaches there. There's the potential to live at a lower cost of living, which is really interesting too.
Yeah.
And also, we would love to be able to find a place where, either we might one day permanently move to, or maybe we'll just spend, half the year there or something, but where we could be closer to other friends, who we really love and value. And like, because of visa stuff, America is we can't really go and live in America.
Yeah.
But we could live in Mexico, and so could our friends. So, we're thinking it might be fun to just, this is a bit of a reconnaissance trip to check out what it's like living there longer term. How we feel about being, in a place without some of the modern conveniences that we've got here, but also how we feel about being, location independent, and all of the interest and adventure that brings too.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what, if any, personal effects it has, because I've been thinking about this a lot recently, because another idea that we've thrown around is doing what's called permanent tourism for a few years, which is where you spend a few months each year in different countries.
Yep.
And you get to experience a lot of different cultures. You don't really have a home base. you basically live out of a backpack. It's like sort of permanent backpacking, essentially.
Yeah.
But, and I've really been thinking about sort of the personal consequences of that. And actually, I've really become more aware of the advantages and the benefits of doing something like that. Because I think when you're at home, you're sort of, especially if you grew up in the country that you currently live in, there's so much cultural stuff that you internalize that just becomes very unconscious after a while. And so I'm really curious about what it's going to be like, not only to live in Mexico for 6 months, but also potentially to experience, spend sort of 3 to 6 months living in different countries at a time and experiencing a whole host of different cultures. And I think I'm hoping, and I have a feeling that what it's going to do is actually put me more in touch with myself. Because once you get rid of all the cultural stuff and the conceptual stuff and these ideas about, these ideas that you grow up with about how the world should be and how people should behave and sort of what customs are right and all this kind of stuff that has a lot of moral weight in your own society, but actually is completely different when you go somewhere else in the world. And all these beliefs about what life should be like and, what success is, for example, what happiness is, what love is. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to kind of almost like shed all those layers and have a chance to say, okay, well, what do I really think? Without any of the sort of restrictions of having grown up in England and growing up with British culture and, there's a lot of kind of stereotypes and cliches about, people are really repressed and that sort of stiff British upper lip and everything. And I think they're cliches because to a certain extent they're true. And, there are other parts of our culture that I'm not sort of such a fan of as well. And I'm really looking forward to experiencing a different culture and seeing what effect that has on me personally. And whether it's helpful for my self-development and my sort of personal inner freedom, I guess.
Yeah, you can literally become who you are instead of who those around you, kind of steer you into becoming. Well, that's really interesting. Personally, I feel a little bit, I don't know what's the word to use, like scared when I think of the thought of not having a home base makes me feel uncomfortable. And I love having a house. Like I love having a place where I can go and know that it's always going to be there pretty much. And it's scary to think of traveling. But on the other hand, I can really see how that might be true, to just free yourself of all the cultural influences. Just don't have a culture, that you're in all the time. And you'll notice the things that you don't like about what was sort of imposed on you. That makes a lot of sense. So, I'm really interested in what you find from this trip. Maybe we could do another review, like 6 months after, or I don't know, after your winter in Mexico and some more traveling, and see how some of the things that you've observed. Would that be cool?
Yeah, we can also do one while we're on the beach as well.
That's right. Yes, because I would like to come visit, at least to spend some more time with you and see what it's like. I did go to Mexico personally once a couple of years ago. There were a lot of things about it that I didn't find so comfortable personally. Like it was too hot for me even in the winter, and I didn't like not being able to drink the tap water and throwing the toilet paper in the trash can next to the, but those, when you think about freedom, those sound really like minuscule in comparison. Although the one thing that does seem like kind of a bigger deal is, I would see a lot of like I remember laying on the beach once and I saw cops with automatic weapons walking up and down the beach, and that was a scary moment. That was a little uncomfortable for me. But I know that parts, Mexico is not all the place that I went to, and it's going to be different. And the U.S. is a police state too. And so sort of, what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do? That's the big question. So,
as freely as you can.
What's that?
You live as freely as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, and if you ever wanted to come visit in New Hampshire, if you're doing the permanent tourism thing, I would be happy to host you while I'm here, of course, anytime.
Oh, we would love that.
That's great to hear that, because we've already talked about that.
Yeah.
Good.
No,
Good to know.
yeah, like Hannah said, well, I too have also just really, really enjoyed getting to know you, and I really value, your take on things both through your show and also just through talking to you. And in a sense, like at the moment, our Free State project is kind of on the internet. That's where we've managed to connect with people who really share our values and
it's a free state of mind, right? I've always hated that name as like a free state. Oh, it's an oxymoron, but no, I think of it as a state of being or a state of mind.
Yeah, and so it's that, and that's wonderful to be able to do that. That's another thing that I think is great to do if you can, to find like-minded people through the internet, and if we can combine that in future with an opportunity where we find somewhere that's cool to live too, then it would be just awesome to be able to have an intentional community of people who had similar values and or living in a place that provided freedom benefits that they don't get at home.
Freedom benefits, I love it. Yeah. That's a very intuitive phrase. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because why shouldn't you choose your neighbors? I mean, why should you just, like most people go through life and their friends become whoever they happen to work with randomly or go to school with, and their neighbors are whoever lives in the same neighborhood, and usually they socialize with them, and that's a little too random for me. Like I want a little bit more purpose in who I spend the most time with. And Jake, you and I talked about this at PorcFest, but you had this show about investing in friendships, and it's like it makes total sense. If you're going to spend a lot of time with people, make it the people that you really click with and really connect with based on shared values.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would, this is all stuff that we're still thinking about and still thinking like what are the options, what are the opportunities, and we're very open-minded about it. So if people who hear this have feedback about it, I'd be really interested to hear it too. Other people who have thought about similar kinds of plans and stuff, I'd love to hear what other people's views are about it.
Or people who actually have experience with this as well.
Yeah, because you're not the first people to think about moving to South America for more freedom. The first gringos to think about moving to South America.
Absolutely. So yeah, definitely let us know what you think.
Yeah, and do you want to give out your email addresses on the air?
I would love to, yeah. Mine is jake@thevoluntarylife.com. My website is thevoluntarylife.com. That's where you can find the podcast and all the previous episodes.
And my email is Hannah, that's HANNAH, @becomingwhoyouare.net. And my website is www.becomingwhoyouare.net.
Great. Yep, and please visit their websites and enjoy their content too, because I can't say that enough, because it's so awesome to have somebody or two people who are really interested in a lot of the same things that I am, but I can also learn new things from. And so it's just been great to listen to your stuff and read the blog and absorb all that content, and just we all lift each other up and make each other freer, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I 110% agree with that. That's definitely been my experience.
Real quickly, I wanted to ask you one more question about this floating island that's man-made and how it relates to personal freedom. I saw this article the other day, and it's from, it's from WCYB.com. Just to read you a little bit of it, do you crave the seclusion of your own private island but hate being tied down to one place? If so, an Austrian firm, Australian economics, I'm getting into the wheels off liberty here.
That would be something.
If so, an Austrian firm has developed a solution to your troubles, a man-made floating, quote, island, complete with 2 small diesel engines for whenever you fancy a change of scenery. The oval-shaped Orsos Island has been designed to combine the mobility of a yacht with the comfort of a house. It offers 6 bedrooms spread over 3 floors and 1,000 square meters, nearly 4 tennis courts worth of luxury living space. And you can have this all for a mere $6 million. What do you think?
$6 million?
Yes.
Yeah.
Small price to pay for your own island.
I think if you've got $6 million to spend, you might as well just get like 4 or 5 properties around the world and just fly between them.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds amazing, but
you're still going to have to deal with stuff on. You'd still have to deal with stuff like about living on the sea, right? Like internet. I mean, that's one.
Well, it's funny you should say that because we have actually debated the question of living on a yacht.
Well, you've debated it.
Let me put it another way. I've debated it. Hannah's watched me debate it. But, my not so cunning plan is to gradually introduce this topic to... Hannah has said that if there's if there's a boat cat, then, she might be up for that plan. But since I can't even sail yet, it's not really a question at the moment. But I just thought it'd be quite cool if we were going to spend, if we were going to be really location independent, because I understand what you mean, Stephanie, about, it's nice to have your place and to have your staff and to have somewhere to go home to and stuff. So I was thinking, well, wouldn't it be cool to have, to have a boat like that? Because then you'd have your stuff, but then if you wanted to just go down to Argentina or something, then just go down the coast.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny because before, like earlier, I don't know, starting maybe a year ago or so, I had heard on Free Talk Live, there's a sponsor of Free Talk Live, which is the other show that I host on Sunday nights. And it's this company that's not really a company even. It's some kind of a board or an organization. Their secret sort of agenda, or not so secret agenda, is that they are Christian missionaries, and they want people to have these little boats so that they can travel all around the world and spread the gospel of Jesus. But on the other hand, they also have sort of a secular branch where they have plans for a fully functional life yacht, essentially. It's made of concrete, so I don't know how well that goes, but...
concrete?
Yeah, it actually floats, apparently, and it has a lot of... they have a lot of plans for, like, desalination of water, and supposedly there's a greenhouse where you can grow food on board, and you can... pull up to any beach and extend a little plank out that you can drive a vehicle on shore. And so it kind of sounds great, like you can go anywhere if this all works according to plan, of course. The only way you can get one of those, however, is to go work and build them for other people for a year or so and join this council where you have to pay, I don't know, some amount of money to get into it. And it seems like a little bit difficult to get in. They don't just sell these boats. You'd have to actually go and put in some labor. But for this other company who made the $6 million floating island, they actually are selling it. So I think it's interesting, and I'm interested because there was a Seasteading Institute, and they've kind of wound down a little bit over the last couple of years, and they were promoting sort of options about sea life. And now there are a bunch of like sort of companies and organizations that are coming out with, this is how somebody could live on the water a much freer life. And I'm just interested in that. So I'll be following it. I just wanted to see what you thought about that.
Well,
I think it's really interesting. It's funny that you bring it up as well, because last year we actually saw a guy who has done something similar and built his own sort of floating house island out of recycled bottles. And
oh, wow. Amazing.
The whole thing floats on several layers of recycled bottles. It's pretty amazing if you see it. But this guy, I think it's an American guy. He wasn't actually there when we went. It was another guy who showed us around. But he's built a whole house on this island, and he's got a garden. I think he catches rainwater, doesn't he, for like his shower and everything. He's got his own water tank. I think he grows his own vegetables. What else did he have? A very aggressive
chickens.
duck.
Oh no, it was a duck, wasn't it? Yeah.
Wow.
But it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And this thing is just floating.
It didn't look very comfy though, did it?
Well, I think it's fine for one person. It's pretty small, but I don't think it's I don't think it's particularly seaworthy. I think the aim is to make it seaworthy one day, but right now it got quite damaged in a hurricane a few years ago, so he's sort of rebuilding it at the moment. I thought that was really cool, because that was definitely an example of, I mean, I don't know what his political leanings are or anything like that, but he seemed to very much have done it that was just something that he wanted to do. That was the way that he wanted to live. So he was doing it from the angle of personal freedom, which I thought was awesome.
Interesting. Start saving your bottles.
But it strikes me that I think some of those ideas of actually having a vessel that you could literally live out at sea, and that strikes me as being something that you need a lot of resources, and I can't imagine it being that much fun either. Just being stuck out there trying to make it work on your floating concrete tank, you know.
Well, Jake,
Whereas,
one of the reasons, if it has 3 bedrooms, you know, you could have 3 different, you know, people or couples living in there, and each one of them could chip in a couple million, and there we go.
yeah, it seems to me that, you know, if you just get a boat and you have the opportunity to move around, then, you know, you can stay in a nice port and a nice harbor or marina or somewhere. You can enjoy, you know, the coastline of Mexico or Chile or Argentina or wherever it is. And then if things get weird politically there and you decide this is not a place that we want to be anymore, you can just go up the coast and go somewhere else. And
Right.
to me, that would be a real sense of freedom, but without having to kind of live the sort of survivalist lifestyle of
Yeah.
being out in the middle of the ocean.
Uh-huh.
Like, that sounds like a lot of hard work to me.
I was thinking actually, you know, it kind of reminds me of people who go off the grid.
Yeah.
And again, I can completely understand why they might want to do that. But I, my personal feeling about it is that it actually limits your freedom more than
Yeah.
it promotes it.
Mm.
Yep.
And I think, you know, freedom is all about having the choice to do what you want to do. And, you know, freedom equals choice, basically. So the idea of being out on a boat at sea, you know, you have very limited choices in that situation. You have limited choices about who you see. You have limited choices about where you go because you're on a boat at sea the whole time. Whereas if, like, the really important thing is that you have a choice. You have a choice to be. I mean,
Well, and when you're when you're tied down
you're-
to making all your own stuff and growing all your own food and doing everything, sewing your own socks and everything, you're forced to spend your time, you know, kind of making it so that you can exist rather than having other
Right.
choices to work on yourself or pursue interests outside of basic necessities.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of the division of labor, and I really enjoy being able to, you know, eat lovely food in a restaurant that we find somewhere, or go and find an interesting market, and sometimes go to a big city where there's nice shops, and be able to enjoy all of those kinds of things too. But if you're out in the middle of the ocean, then you kind of your economy is limited to those 6 people on this concrete barge or whatever it is, and that doesn't
Yeah.
sound very much
And
fun.
like when
Right.
it comes to food, for example, you have to grow your own food. So you've got to plant it, wait for it to grow, nurture it, tend it.